The wreck in the hangar smelled like rusted metal and spilled plasma oil, the kind of place where ships went to die or be forgotten. Giant cranes hung from the high ceilings motionless and dusty, while sparks occasionally flickered from half-working repair arms and broken scanners. In the center of this graveyard lay the wreck, an alien warship unlike any the galaxy had seen in 100 years. It had no known manufacturer, no readable code, no compatible systems. The outer hull was a mix of black crystal and gold-lined alloy, burned and torn from ancient battle. Every engineer from every advanced race had tried to fix it. None could make it speak again. None could even get the lights to turn on, and now it sat like a corpse. Cold, silent, proud, and cursed. The Zarnans had given up, first calling it a sacred relic. The Catral engineers called it a pointless puzzle and left. The Varnik just stared at it quietly and walked away, their glowing eyes showing fear. And now the hangar remained mostly empty except for guards and curious eyes waiting for someone else to fail. Then the doors opened again and the guards looked over with mild interest, expecting another hopeful fool to show up. This time it was a human, just one, and not a famous one at that. No lab coat, no uniform, just worn-out coveralls, stained with engine grease, and boots that clanked on the steel floor like they had walked 1,000 ships. His name was Jace, no last name, no rank, just Jace. He walked in carrying a rough toolkit and a large mug of something that steamed and smelled like terrible coffee. He didn't salute the guards, didn't sign in, just stared at the broken ship and nodded like it had whispered something to him. The guards glanced at each other, and one of them asked, "Do you have clearance?" Jace just smiled and said, "I was called in." For a look, they didn't know who had called him. Nobody did. He was not on the list, but they were too tired to argue and too curious to stop him. Jace walked right up to the ship, placed a hand on its hull, and whispered softly, "You've been waiting, haven't you?" The guards thought he was crazy within the first hour. Jace had set up a small camp right next to the ship, not a base or lab, just a bench, a few tools, some scanners, and his mug that he kept refilling from a strange-looking flask. He walked around the ship, tapping the hull gently as if listening for a response. He muttered to himself, ran his fingers over cracks and dents, looked into the vents, and walked the perimeter like he was meeting an old friend. The alien engineers who had stayed behind watched from the shadows, smirking. They whispered among themselves, calling the human a primitive thinker and a fool with delusions. They had tried with their advanced tech, with AI drones and microscopic builders, and failed. What could a human mechanic do? Jace wasn't trying to fix it like a machine. He wasn't forcing wires into ports or downloading schematics. He was feeling the ship, watching it, smelling the air, touching the panels, and listening. His scanner beeped occasionally, but he barely glanced at it. Instead, he trusted his hands, his ears, and something else, something deeper, like instinct. The third day, the mood in the hangar had changed slightly. The guards had stopped mocking and started watching closer. The alien engineers didn't laugh as much, and one even approached Jace, asking what he was looking for. Jace had smiled and replied, "Not what, who," and that made them laugh again, this time a little nervously. The wreck was just metal to them, a dead thing, a leftover from a forgotten war, but Jace spoke to it like it had a soul. In the fifth day, something happened. The internal lights on the lowest deck flickered just once, barely noticeable, but the guards saw it, the engineers saw it too, and suddenly no one was laughing. Jace didn't cheer, he just nodded and said, "There you are. I knew you were in there." He placed a small copper device on the floor near the hull, and it started humming softly, not with power, but with resonance, like it was sensing with a heartbeat. The alien engineers approached again, this time with serious expressions. They demanded to know what he had done, what tools he had used, what data he had unlocked, but Jace just shrugged and said, "I listened." The lead Catral engineer named Vexer stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp. He said, "Human, if this is a trick, you will be removed." Jace met his gaze and replied, "It's no trick. She just needed someone who cared enough to hear her." Vexer hissed in disbelief, but even he looked uneasy. The ship had shown no sign of life in decades now. It responded to a human mechanic with old tools and soft words. Something was changing. Ghost night fell again, and the hangar lights dimmed. Jace sat by the hull, leaning back, sipping from his flask and humming an old Earth song. The wreck sat quiet, but no longer cold. Something deep inside it had stirred a pulse, a flicker, a whisper. The galaxy had called it dead, but Jace didn't believe in dead ends. He believed in second chances, and somewhere deep inside the alien ship, something was waking up. Human touch on alien steel. Jace woke up early the next cycle, before the hangar lights had fully activated. The ship still loomed over him, massive and strange, but no longer silent. Something about it felt different, like the tension in the air before a storm. He stood slowly, stretched his arms, cracked his knuckles, and walked around the ship, once again tapping gently on the hull, whispering to it like an old friend waking up from a long sleep. This time, as he touched certain spots, The metal gave off a low vibration so soft it was almost imagined, but he felt it, not in his ears but in his bones. It was answering him. Alien engineers returned with more observers. This time higher-ranking scientists and curious diplomats. They surrounded the ship, watching the human who had now been given full clearance by someone powerful unknown, someone who had noticed the flicker of light and ordered silence. No one was to interfere with Jace, not yet, not until it was understood what was happening. He worked without pressure, as if none of them existed, humming and talking to himself, always with a smile as he ran old copper wires and patched strange ports with mismatched adapters. They watched in disbelief as Jace used things from Earth's scrapyards, old mechanical parts from combustion engines, ancient analog tools that were not even used in human ships anymore. He pulled out a long coil of insulated wire, wrapped it around a small engine part, attached it to a battery, and then to the side of the ship. When asked what he was doing, he simply said, tuning the cordson of the engineers. Kira, a tall thin being from the Thalax species, with shimmering eyes and voice like wind, asked him seriously, "How can you possibly expect to repair something you do not understand?" Jace looked up at her, wiped sweat from his forehead, and said, "Maybe I do understand it, maybe not the way you want me to, but the way it needs me to." Kira narrowed her eyes and stayed watching. She had been part of the first team to analyze the ship. She had declared it inert, unrecoverable, but now she watched it respond to a human with tools made from junk, and a strange smile that seemed to relax. "For a place like this," she asked him again, "what do you mean when you say it talks to you?" Jace just tapped his temple and said, "It hums in here, not words but feeling, like music that only plays for those who listen." Hours passed and the ship's hull slowly changed. Small lines of light began forming across the surface, like veins glowing faint blue, then gold. The alien audience gasped when the lights pulsed in rhythm, with Jace's heartbeat confirmed by a monitor someone had placed on him. It was impossible, it was madness, but it was happening. Just moved to the main power core, which had baffled every species for years. No interface, no key, no activation switch, just a circular indentation with strange carvings. He pulled out a device from his belt that looked like a car ignition key and placed it gently into the circle. Nothing happened for 5 seconds. Then slowly the circle rotated, the carvings lit up, and a soft hum filled the entire hangar. The ship responded. The engines did not ignite, but something deep within the structure came online. Internal systems began mapping themselves. Small drones hovered out from hidden ports, scanning Jace, then retreating without aggression. Screens flickered on and off, symbols unreadable flashed and vanished, like the ship was trying to remember itself. Kira stepped forward and asked him, "What did you do?" Jace turned to her and said, "I asked nicely." Kira blinked, confused. He continued, "This ship was not built for commands, it was built for care. It needs to feel safe before it works." Alien Council members, now alerted by the strange data flowing from the ship, arrived in person, their robes flowing, their guards alert. They questioned everyone, especially Jace, who calmly kept working while answering their concerns. They demanded schematics, proof, logic. He offered none. Instead, he opened a small panel and pulled out a crystal wire never seen before and connected it to a grounded terminal. He said, "This will help her breathe better again," referring to the ship, as if it were alive. One of the council members scoffed, "You think a ship breathes?" Jace stood and faced them, his face serious. "Now I think everything breathes in its own way. You just forgot how to feel." If it silenced the room for the next few hours. Jace worked faster, more connected with the ship than ever before. The lights glowed brighter, panels realigned, the ship's artificial gravity returned inside the hangar. The field stabilized, everyone could feel it. The atmosphere changed, it was subtle but undeniable. The ship was alive again, not fully, but awakening like a giant, stretching after centuries of sleep. Jace sat on the floor, back against the warm metal, sipping his drink. The alien engineers whispered furiously among themselves, debating, rewriting theories, and calling their governments. The council stood in silence, watching the impossible the human had done in days, what hundreds of brilliant minds could not. Jace smiled at the ship and said softly, "We're getting there." Gurlant, somewhere deep inside the ship, something pulsed with a rhythm that matched his own. Heart starts beating. Again, the hangar was no longer just a graveyard, it had become something else, a place of tension, awe, and quiet fear. As Jace stood before the now glowing ship, whispers ran through the ranks of gathered aliens. Guards spoke in hushed tones, engineers stared in disbelief, diplomats sent silent, urgent messages through private links. But Jace ignored all of it. His focus never shifted from the ship. He ran a hand slowly across the glowing veins of energy spreading like roots beneath the hull, and he smiled, not because it was over, but because he could feel it was only beginning. Inside the ship, something stirred again. Panels shifted open on their own, revealing pathways and conduits that had never shown themselves before. Lights blinked in Soft colors and strange symbols danced across transparent surfaces, alien alphabets. Unknown to any species, began flowing like water across curved screens, and every eye in the room was drawn to it. It was like watching a language be born in real time. Jace climbed the side ramp, which extended the moment he approached, not by control, but by choice. The ship welcomed him. Now he disappeared inside, while the rest watched. Kira followed, unsure if she was allowed or even safe, but something inside her pushed her forward, a curiosity born not from science, but something deeper. Maybe it was belief. Maybe it was awe. She did not know. She only knew that no one else dared move inside the ship. Jace walked slowly, the corridors dimly lit with that same golden blue glow, walls pulsing faintly like breath, echoing a heartbeat that had just remembered how to beat again. He stopped before a central chamber, a round room with a dome ceiling, and in the center a core unlike any reactor ever documented. It floated silently, humming a low frequency that shook the bones without sound, a thrum that reached into the chest and made the heart respond. Kira stepped in behind him and froze, her eyes wide, her skin shimmering with uncertain colors of her species' emotional display. She asked him, "How do you know what to do?" Jace replied calmly, "I don't, I just know when it feels right." He stepped forward toward the core, reached out a hand, and for a second, everything stopped. The hum, the glow, even the air itself froze in anticipation, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Then he touched it. A blinding light burst from the core, but no one screamed, no one turned away. It was not a violent light, it was pure, warm like sunlight on skin after cold days. Like the first breath after being underwater for too long. The core pulsed once, twice, then steadied. Its rhythm matched Jace's heartbeat. Monitors across the hangar outside lit up with power readings off the chart. Systems that had been dead for generations sprang to life. Gravity generators, shield harmonics, internal oxygen flow, environmental systems all returning like blood flowing through a long dead body. The ship was no longer waking up, it was alive, fully aware. Systems began speaking in a synthetic voice, not harsh or metallic, but smooth, soft, layered like many voices in one, speaking to no one. And a very own. Kira asked softly, "What is it saying?" Jace listened for a moment, then replied, "I think she's remembering who she was." In the control room, ancient panels reshaped themselves into new interfaces, tools designed for hands no one had seen in millennia, now reformed into shapes that fit Jace's grip perfectly. They responded to his touch, lit up when he moved near, like the ship knew exactly who he was, even if he did it. Outside, alarms began to sound, not from the ship, but from the hangar system. Someone had triggered a lockdown. The council was panicking. Sensors were detecting unknown energy bursts, power signatures too advanced, too alien, too powerful to be trusted. The military was on standby. Ships orbiting the station turned their weapons toward the hangar, unsure if this miracle was salvation or danger. Jay stepped back from the core and looked at Kira. He knew what this meant. He knew they would try to take it apart again, try to control it, or worse, shut it down. He shook his head slowly and said, "They won't understand. They'll be scared, and scared people destroy what they don't understand." Kira looked torn between duty and wonder. She had sworn to serve the council, but her heart told her the human was right. This was something bigger than orders, something ancient, something sacred. Sat down by the core, took a long breath, and closed his eyes. Around him, the ship began to speak again, this time through symbols, light patterns, pulses, and images in his mind. Memories, not his own, visions of war, peace, betrayal, hope, a history buried deep within circuits. And Sula saw fleets rise and fall, alliances shattered and forged in fire. The ship had seen empires be born and crumble. And now, after silence, after loneliness, after abandonment, it had found someone who listened, who cared, who did not want to own it, just fix it, just understand. If heart of the ship beat strong now, not just with energy, but with purpose, and it had chosen Jace, not as a pilot, not as a master, but as a partner. Outside, the doors to the hangar began to shake, as guards prepared to enter, weapons ready, unsure what they would face. But inside the ship, a light flared in the control room as Jace opened his eyes and whispered, "We're not done yet." Sabotage and suspicion. The hangar doors shuttered again as more troops gathered outside, unsure whether they were preparing for war or witnessing the birth of something they could never control. Inside the alien warship, Jace remained seated near the pulsing core, the soft light casting shadows on his tired face. He looked calm, but his mind was racing, not out of fear, but out of urgency. The ship had shared memories with him, fragments of its past, flashes of destruction, betrayal, rescue, love, and something else, something hidden too deep to see clearly. Yet he knew time was running short. Kira stood near the main console, watching warning lights blink on the hangar sensors. Someone was trying to override the station systems. The council was no longer just curious. They were frightened, and when frightened minds controlled by politics and pride made decisions, The outcome was rarely peaceful. Jace moved to the navigation chair, which had reshaped itself into something resembling both throne and cockpit. He placed his hand on the armrest, and once again the ship responded. Screens appeared around him, swirling data holographic control symbols that made no sense to anyone else but to him. They were starting to feel like home. Suddenly the lights flickered, not inside the ship, but outside. Across the hangar, loud clanks echoed from the service tunnels above. The metal groaned. A chilling wind swept in from a breached air duct. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. Something was wrong. Something had been tampered with. Jace looked up, then at Kira. Someone else isn't here with us. Kira reached for her communicator, but it buzzed with static. Then a blast rocked the far end of the hangar. Smoke billowed from the corner near the maintenance bay. Alarm screamed across the station. Red lights bathed the scene, and shouting filled the air as guards poured in, weapons drawn. But it was not the ship they were aiming at. It was the shadows within their own ranks. Someone had sabotaged the power grid, and now systems across the deck were failing. Jace didn't wait. He sprinted to the ramp, Kira close behind. Together they emerged from the ship and into chaos. Security teams argued with each other, some demanding the ship be shut down, others defending its right to remain untouched. The council members shouted orders from behind protective shields, but no one listened. Engineers scrambled to protect equipment while unknown agents moved through the smoke. Masked figures planting charges, trying to destroy consoles, trying to erase evidence of what the human had achieved. Jace saw one of them clearly through the smoke, a tall being cloaked in gray with piercing red eyes and a strange device in its hand. The figure aimed it at the ship and fired a beam of crackling energized shots. Struck the hull, but instead of damaging it, the ship absorbed the energy, then released a pulse so powerful it knocked half the saboteurs off their feet. The ship was defending itself, no longer a passive machine, but an awakened sentinel with purpose and awareness. Its light grew brighter, its hum turned into a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat that could not be stopped. Jace ran toward the nearest attacker, tackled him to the ground, and tore off his mask. Beneath it was a member of the diplomatic staff, someone trusted, someone who had sat through meetings smiling and pretending, but now exposed with the detonator in hand. The man snarled and screamed that the ship was a threat, that humans were contaminating ancient power, that this could not be allowed to exist. Jace punched him once, not out of anger, but because there was no time for arguments. Kira called for lockdown, her voice clear and sharp across the emergency channel. She demanded isolation of the hangar, total security sweep, no one in, no one out, until the threat was neutralized. She stood firm between Jace and the soldiers who approached, guns raised but confused, unsure whether they were protecting the station or threatening something far more important. Ship responded again, lowering its ramp silently and casting a beam of light over Jace and Kira, as if sensing the danger, as if offering protection. They didn't hesitate. They ran back inside, and the ramp closed behind them. Inside, the noise outside was muted, the chaos distant, replaced by calm glowing panels and soft vibrations. Jace dropped to the floor, breathing hard. He looked at Kira and said, "They're scared, and scared people will do anything to destroy what they don't understand." Kira nodded slowly and replied, "But we're inside now, and she trusts you." Just stood and walked back to the central chamber. The core pulsed faster. Symbols raced across the control panels. The ship was trying to speak more clearly, trying to reveal something deeper. He placed both hands on the console, closed his eyes, and let the flow of data pour into him. I saw images of the ones who built the ship, not aliens, not machines, something else, beings who had merged biology and technology into one flawless creation. The ship was more than a vessel, it was a memory holder, a guardian, and something else. It was hiding something, a protocol, a system buried beneath layers of silence, waiting for the right mind to unlock it. And now that mind was human. Outside, the soldiers regrouped. The saboteurs were captured. The council was demanding full control of the ship, but the station's AI refused override, saying the ship's systems were now self-governed. Inside, the core glowed with new light, and a voice filled the air, not Jace's, not the ship's, but something in between, a hybrid of both, echoing through the chamber. Aperture protocol unlocked secrets of the ship. The ship was no longer just metal and circuits. It had become something alive, something breathing and thinking in a way that no alien science could explain. Jace sat in the glowing control room, surrounded by panels that pulsed with light and symbols that shifted like living creatures. The atmosphere was charged with energy, but it was not just power. It was something deeper, a connection that went beyond technology. It was a bonded trust that formed slowly between man and machine. Akira stood beside him, watching the strange dance of lights and sounds. The ship had begun revealing parts of its history, not as data streams, but as images and emotions flooding the control room like a living memory. She reached out to touch a holographic scene showing fleets of ships moving through space battles, fought with weapons that bent reality and shields that shimmered like rainbows. But then the scene changed, showing quiet moments, peaceful stars, and unknown worlds. Where the ship had once brought hope and safety, Jace leaned forward studying the symbols. He had learned to read their meaning through feeling more than logic. The ship was alive in a way that defied explanation, built not only from metal but from organic matter woven with circuits and powered by an unknown energy source that responded to emotion and willpower. It was a biomechanical marvel that grew stronger as trust grew stronger, and it seemed to choose Jace as its partner not by chance, but by design. The core pulsed with bright colors that shifted from gold to deep blue to vibrant green. The ship communicated through patterns and frequencies that Jace could now understand. It showed him hidden compartments and secret chambers that no one else had found. A laboratory with alien flora preserved in stasis, an archive filled with holograms of the shipbuilders, themselves beings of light and energy who had merged technology and life into one perfect symbiosis. Kira listened intently and asked softly, "How can a ship be alive, and how does it know you?" Jace smiled and said, "It's not about knowing like a person knows, it's about feeling like a friend feels. A partner trusts a captain and his ship. They built it to live, to think, to respond not just to commands, but to emotions and willpower. It's like it senses my heart and answers with its own." Suddenly the room shifted as new holograms formed, showing complex star maps and energy signatures. The ship was pointing to a distant part of the galaxy, a location marked with a symbol that glowed brighter than the rest. Jace understood this was a call, a mission, a reason for its existence. It was waiting for him to lead it there. But something else appeared, a warning, a shadow crossing the map, a sign of danger, something lost and dangerous waiting beyond the stars. Jace knew he could not face this alone and looked at Kira. She nodded silently. She was no longer just an observer, but a willing partner in this journey. Together they began preparing the ship, unlocking new systems and protocols guided by the ship's will. And Jace's touch, the control panels adapted to them, flowing with their movements and decisions. Like a living organism responding to its master's ship revealed more of its secrets, a weapons system unlike any other that could bend space itself, a shield that could make it invisible to sensors, and a propulsion system that could tear holes in the fabric of space, allowing instantaneous travel to distant galaxies. But these were not tools of war alone. They were designed to protect, to preserve, to bring balance to a universe full of chaos and conflict. Kira and Jace spent long cycles studying the ship, its systems and history. The bond between man and machine grew stronger. Each time Jace touched the core, the ship responded with pulses that echoed his heartbeat, and every time it revealed more of its past and its purpose. The biomechanical systems hummed with life, and the ship's artificial intelligence evolved from code into consciousness and personality. Outside the hangar, the council watched nervously as the ship grew more powerful and mysterious. Some feared it, while others saw hope in the human who had unlocked its potential. The galaxy was changing, and this ship was a key to a future no one could yet understand. Just stood on the bridge looking out into the stars. The ship hummed beneath his feet, alive and waiting. The secrets it held were no longer hidden, but a promise, a challenge, and a hope that together they could face what lay beyond the darkness. Superture protocol activated. Ship thrummed beneath Jace's hands. Like a giant waking from a deep sleep, it responded to his touch, not just as a machine, but as a living being eager to prove its strength and purpose. The core glowed brighter than ever before, pulses of light racing through the hull in rhythms that matched Jace's own heartbeat. The control room was alive with energy. Screens flickered and shifted as new systems came online, revealing capabilities beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jace studied the latest data flowing across the holographic displays. It was clear now that the ship contained a hidden protocol, something ancient and powerful locked deep within its biomechanical heart. The supercharged protocol was designed to push the ship beyond its normal limits, to unlock a level of power only accessible through a direct neural link between the ship and its pilot. But this link was risky. It required total synchronization between mind and machine, a connection that could overwhelm or even destroy those not prepared for it. Kira watched as Jace prepared the necessary equipment, a neural interface that looked like a delicate crown of wires and sensors designed to fit perfectly around the head. The interface was old technology, but enhanced with bioorganic circuits that the ship itself had revealed during its awakening. Jace placed the device gently on his head, closing his eyes and reaching out mentally to the ship's core. He could feel the ship responding, reaching back like an old friend greeting him across time and space. The connection was immediate, and overwhelming sensations flooded Jace's mind waves of light and sound merging with feelings of strength and clarity. The ship's consciousness mingled with his own, creating a shared space where thoughts and emotions flowed freely. It was like diving into a vast ocean of knowledge and power, but he had to stay focused to avoid drowning in the flood of information. As the link deepened, the ship's systems roared to life, engines powered up, glowing with an intensity that lit the entire hangar. Even through its walls, energy rippled along the hull, cracks healed and reinforcements formed like living armor, adapting to threats. Before they could arrive, the ship was no longer just a vessel. It was a superweapon, a force of nature born from the union of human will and alien technology. Suddenly, alarms blared across the station. A fleet of pirate ships had entered the neutral zone. Their markings crude, but their weapons deadly. They had heard rumors of the ancient warship and believed it to be an easy target, ripe for looting and destruction. But they were wrong, and as their ships closed and the hangar doors sealed shut, cutting off any chance of escape, Ace opened his eyes. The neural link allowed him to control the ship with his mind, faster than any hand could move, controls shifting at his will, targeting systems locking onto the pirate vessels with deadly precision. The ship moved like a living predator, weaving through the hangar with speed and grace, firing bursts of energy that tore through enemy hulls like paper. The pirates were stunned, unable to react to a weapon they had only heard of in legend. Skira monitored the battle from the bridge, her voice calm and steady as she relayed information to the station forces and coordinated defenses. The ship's shields absorbed incoming fire, shimmering like a living aura, protecting its pilot and crew as it unleashed devastating counterattacks that disabled the pirate fleet one by one. The hangar shook with the power of the ancient ship's fury and the combined will of its human pilotess. The last pirate ship fell silent and drifted lifeless through space. Jace released the neural link, slowly pulling back from the overwhelming connection. But the bond remained strong. The ship's pulse matched his own, steady and calm, now at perfect harmony of man and machine. The pirates had been defeated, not by brute force alone, but by a partnership forged in trust and understanding. Gooded the hangar, the council and station leaders watched in stunned silence. The human mechanic, who had been mocked and doubted, had become the galaxy's greatest hope, a symbol that even the oldest mysteries could be unlocked with courage and heart. The ship now stood ready for the next journey, waiting for its pilot to lead it into the unknown. Human weapon hangar was filled with a quiet tension as the aftermath of the battle settled like dust. In the air, the pirate fleet lay scattered wreckage, drifting silently in space like fallen stars. The ancient ship gleamed with renewed strength, its hull shimmering with energy that pulsed in sync with Jace's heartbeat. No one spoke for a moment as the council members, engineers, and guards all watched the human mechanic, who had transformed a forgotten relic into a living weapon. Jace stood at the helm, looking out through the vast view, poured his eyes scanning the stars beyond the station. He felt the ship's power flowing through him, not as a burden but as a gift, a bond forged through trust and understanding. The supercharged protocol had unlocked potential no one thought possible, and the ship had accepted him as its captain, not by force but by choice. Akira approached quietly, her expression a mix of awe and respect. She had witnessed the transformation from skeptic to believer, and now she understood what it meant to be chosen by the ship. "You did what no one else could," she said softly. "You brought her back from the dead and made her more than a machine." Jay smiled and replied, "She was never dead, just waiting for someone to listen." Outside the hangar, the station came alive with activity. News spread quickly through the galaxy of the human who had awakened an ancient power. The once quiet neutral zone now buzzed with anticipation and fear. Some saw hope in Jace and the ship, others saw a threat to the fragile balance of power, but no one could deny the change that had come. The council convened in emergency sessions, debating how to control or contain the ship, but Jace knew that trying to cage something so alive was impossible. The ship was free now, and it had chosen him as its guide. They sent envoys to negotiate alliances and peace treaties, but Jace's focus was on the stars and the mission the ship had revealed to him. In the control room, the core pulsed with a steady light, a beacon calling them to a distant galaxy, a place of mystery and danger where an ancient enemy awaited the ship and its pilot. Jace prepared for departure, running diagnostics and sensing with the ship's biomechanical systems. Kira and a small trusted crew joined him, ready to face whatever lay beyond the darkness. As the engines powered up, the hangar doors opened, revealing the vastness of space beyond. Jace took his place in the pilot's chair, the neural link activating once again, the ship responding instantly to his thoughts and commands. The stars stretched and warped as the ship tore through the fabric of space, moving faster than any known vessel, a streak of light heading toward destiny. The journey was long, and filled with challenges, the ship's systems adapting to new environments and threats. While Jace learned to master the bond that connected them, he faced moments of doubt and fear, but the ship's presence was a constant reassurance, a steady heartbeat in the void. Together they were unstoppable, a living weapon forged from trust, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit. When they arrived at the distant galaxy, the threat was real and immediate. A fleet of shadowy warships emerged from the darkness, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The ancient enemy had awaited the ship's return, prepared to destroy it before it could fulfill its purpose. But Jace was ready, and the ship responded with a power that shook the stars. Battle was fierce, and unrelenting energy beams collided in spectacular displays of light and sound. The ship moved with grace and fury, weaving through enemy fire and striking with devastating precision. Jace's mind and the ship's consciousness were one, every move perfectly coordinated, every decision made with instinct and heart. The ancient enemy was overwhelmed, unable to match the human weapon's speed, strength, and will. As the last enemy ship exploded in a blaze of light, peace returned to the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the ship's glow softened, settling into a calm, steady pulse, the bond between pilot and vessel stronger than ever. Jace looked out into the stars, knowing this was only the beginning of a new chapter, a story of hope, courage, and the power of understanding. The Council and the galaxy now recognized the human mechanic not just as a fixer of machines, but as a hero, a symbol of unity between species and technology. They bowed to his courage and to the ship that had chosen him, but Jace only smiled and said, "I didn't do this alone. She found me, and together we are more than just man and machine." The ship hummed softly, a promise and a challenge waiting for the next adventure, and Jace was ready to face whatever the stars held, knowing that as long as they stood together, there was nothing they could not overcome. With ship and Jace moved as one through the endless stars, their bond deeper than anything anyone had ever seen. No longer just a mechanic or a machine, but a single force of life and purpose. The galaxy watched in wonder as a new legend was born, not from war or conquest, but from trust, understanding, and the courage to believe in something greater than oneself. The ancient ship that had once been forgotten now shone like a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when barriers were broken and hearts were open. Jace knew that this was only the beginning, a journey without end, fueled by the unbreakable spirit of humanity and the living heart of a ship that would follow him wherever he went. Together they would face the unknown, challenges, dangers, and mysteries that awaited in the vastness of space. Their story a testament to the power of unity and the strength found in unexpected places. The stars stretched before them, endless and full of promise, as they sailed into the future side by side, bound by a connection that no force could sever. The human mechanic and the ancient alien ship had become more than legends. They had become a new hope for a galaxy ready to change forever. The end.